The Syrian regime and its allies have been accused of unleashing an onslaught on civilians in eastern Aleppo that probably amounts to a war crime. Well, that's the assessment of the UN's human rights chief after a day of intense shelling and airstrikes on the last remaining opposition-held areas. Now, a ceasefire meant to allow rebels and civilians to leave fell apart as people inside sent more pleas for help. And they include this group of children in an orphanage.
Hello, this can be the last day you hear my voice and see me alive. My name is Kamas and I am 10 years old. I've been staying in an orphanage for 2 years as my parents were killed in an airstrike. I'm sending this message as a call for human rights and child rights. We want to be evacuated from Aleppo. These 47 children are my brothers and sisters. We want peace. We cannot go outside because of the jets and shelling. We want to live like the rest of the world.
Well, one of the groups doing the most for the civilians trapped in Aleppo are Syria's White Helmets. We spoke to a member of the group working in the city's east, and he says people there are confused and scared.
Yesterday, there was a deal to evacuate the injured. A ceasefire came into effect. They said there would be an evacuation for the wounded from Ramusa, managed by the Red Crescent, that was meant to include the evacuation of fighters, civilians, and relief organization staff. Last night, we tried to evacuate the injured in the rain. Cars headed towards the exit corridor. When they reached regime checkpoints, cars were filmed. The regime claims the first patch was evacuated, but this is false. The convoy was videotaped and forced back. In the morning, nothing happened. Shooting started from the regime side. Clashes now are continuous. Some say the talks have stopped. The situation here is catastrophic. There is no solution. Civilians here are scared. Women and children don't know their destiny.
So serious questions remain over the future of the ceasefire. One rebel group has said it expects evacuations to begin at 4 GMT on Thursday, but there have also been reports of the regime taking more territory and a new offensive by Shia militia. Well, Edis Tianchan reports now on a day of violence in the east of Aleppo.
Shells crash into apartment buildings in East Aleppo. This was supposed to be an area under ceasefire. Thousands of civilians and rebels were to be moved out of harm's way from dawn on Wednesday, after waiting up all night. But as pro-regime forces opened fire, it was clear that the evacuation wasn't happening.
There is supposed to be a ceasefire, but tens of rockets targeted besieged Aleppo. The regime is firing on 4 or 5 neighbourhoods under the control of the opposition. As we can hear now, there is an intense shelling. I cannot stand here on the street for long, as all the territories under the opposition control have been fired on intensely.
Buses had been waiting to bring people out of the opposition enclave, complete with pictures of Bashar al-Assad. But as the fighting worsened, they would be sent back to regime-controlled territory. As rebel groups withdrew from one district, people scoured their headquarters to see what they could salvage, and found their stockpile of food.
They kept all these items here and there. They didn't allow us to eat even a piece of bread. We died out of hunger.
Why the ceasefire was violated so quickly wasn't immediately clear. Turkey says it was a result of regime demands, and President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has accused Bashar al-Assad of committing war crimes.
The realization of the ceasefire brokered by Turkey is perhaps the last hope for the innocent people in Aleppo. This humanitarian corridor must be opened immediately, and the evacuation of civilians from eastern Aleppo must be allowed at once. Assad regime is committing war crimes in eastern Aleppo, and everybody, including those who support him, has to see this.
But Russia's foreign minister Sergei Lavrov blamed rebels.
I expect that the rebels will cease resistance in the next 2 to 3 days, and the minority that declines to do so, it will be their own choice.
The Syrian regime surrounded the rebels in a tight siege and feels it can now dictate its terms. But while it wants the rebels to lay down their arms, it's not clear what it wants from the tens of thousands of unarmed civilians. It is Tianshan, TRT World in Gaziantep, near the Syrian border.